This is the East Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the East Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, breaking down districts 5 and 6, week in, week out in the state of Idaho. My name is Brandon Baney, joined as always by Sean Kane, our East Idaho expert. Sean, what's up?
You know, I got your email, and I also got emails from TurboTax, and I'm like, hey, let me get through basketball before you do taxes, okay? That's all I'm saying. Like, I don't need TurboTax emailing me, but anyways, I'm good. I'm excited for boys basketball. It's kind of got me like revitalized and pumped up.
Yes, it is going to be such a great time now that we're into both girls and boys basketball. I think I've said before on this Prepcast, Sean, but like basketball is my favorite sport to watch. It's my favorite sport to play. It's my favorite sport to broadcast. Like, yeah, football's great and everything, and I love football, but to me, football is like third. Like, to me, it's basketball, and then I'm a big baseball fan, and then football. So this is like my nirvana. Hoops nirvana.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I would say I'd be basketball and then football, because I'm a big Bulls fan from the golden era of basketball, the late 80s, early 90s.
Right.
That's a whole nother Prepcast. But yeah, I'm excited, and the girls, they start girls, and football still you kind of forget. So girls, it starts, and you're like, all right, and then the boys start, and then man, it's winter sports is going.
Yes. Well, this is our boys basketball preview, where we're going to basically go through all the classifications, kind of give you some teams, players that we're keeping an eye on, maybe go over a couple of early results. And the next week, we'll be back into a normal flow of talking about boys and girls basketball, some wrestling. But it's going to be just boys basketball today as we do our preview. We are finishing up our boys basketball previews on the website, IdahoSports.com. We're missing, 4 or 5 conference previews still. But by the end of the week, all of the boys basketball previews will be up and running. Girls basketball previews, of course, have been live for some time. We do have the preseason coaches polls for both boys and girls basketball, every conference in the state. We'll be referencing those throughout the show today. And then, Sean, if you go to the homepage at IdahoSports.com right now, there is tons of wrestling coverage.
Yeah, I was just reading one. I was reading the 4A, right? And just reading all the people that have national stuff, not just what they did in the state of Idaho, what they've done national. That's super interesting. You guys got to get in and read that for sure.
Idaho's got so many great wrestlers that are doing big things on the national stage, as you said, Sean. So we've got previews for every classification in wrestling. We've got a girls wrestling preview. We just made it live like 5 minutes ago before we came on to do this podcast, Sean. We brought back the individual rankings per classification, the top 6 in each weight class. That's going to spur a lot of debate amongst the wrestling fans. But that's we're so glad to be able to bring that back. That's been a huge staple of what we've done in the past with wrestling coverage. So yeah, super excited for all that. And then tonight, Sean, is our the launch of our new wrestling only podcast, the Matt Chat Prepcast. I'll be joined by a cavalcade of wrestling experts as we break it down and interact with the fans. It'll be every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Mountain Time. We'll go live every Tuesday night on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and Twitter account. You can still catch it the next day or through audio only means the following day, as well. As a friendly reminder, that's how you can consume this podcast on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel or Facebook page if you want to watch video, or audio only at IdahoSports.com or wherever you download your podcasts. All right. Got all that promotional fluff out of the way, Sean.
Oh yeah. Why not? I mean, but there's just tons, so it's good. And there's, wrestling's like tennis. There's the team and then so many individual weight classes, right? So there's a lot of stuff to dive into per se.
Yes. So let's do our boys basketball preview. When we did the girls preview, we went from 5A down to 1A D2. I'd like to go the opposite way today, if that's okay. Does that sound all right, Sean?
Yeah. I mean, of course I prep my stuff to go the other way, but thank you.
Well, I wanted to tip the cap to, obviously we have a couple of defending champions from East Idaho, Hillcrest, which we will talk about in due time, but Rockland, Rockland is the defending 1A D2 boys basketball champions. And I think they've got a really good shot. I mean, Hillcrest obviously has a great shot to repeat as well, but I think Rockland has equally as good of a chance. So I figured we'd start with Rockland and then work our way up through the classifications. So at the 1A D2 level, in the Rocky Mountain Conference, this is a 9-team conference. Rockland was the overwhelming favorite in our preseason coaches poll. They bring back Teague Matthews, who can jump out of the gym. They bring back Brigham Perman, all these great athletes that we've seen over the years in football and basketball. And boy, Rockland's just going to be tough again.
Yeah, they do awards and, like for the best team of the year and with different medias. And I thought that Rockland boys basketball team should have won the best team of the year in Southeast Idaho. Personally, that would have been my vote because they were so dominant last year. And there's not a whole lot of change. So that's going to be, that conference is going to, I think be rock heavy. And then you've got a lot of interesting other kind of teams in there. You have Water Springs, which is fairly new. Grace Lutheran is always competitive. Showban is always good, and my favorite, I always like Mackey. I don't know why, but I just always have like this, I like Mackey to do well, and I couldn't tell you why, but it's just I like always seeing Mackey up there, and they're good as well. But man, it's I think it's a 2 through 9 is a fight for second, and when really, because you've just got all these teams, and I think that's what makes Rockland really good is you get to compete in a big conference, and that helps.
Yeah, if there is a team that could maybe knock off Rockland, it would be Water Springs. They were picked second in the poll. David Canfield is back. I feel like he's been there for 10 years. He's one of those guys that's just stepped in since day one, his freshman year, and been a fantastic player. They have Drew Plocker playing as well. A new head coach for Water Springs this year, Evan Bindennagel. We'll see how he does. Longtime coach and athletic director Scott Moe left for a job in Billings, Montana. So it's kind of almost a new era across the board at Water Springs this year. But we'll see what Coach Bindennagel can do there. Grace Lutheran, you mentioned, was picked third in the preseason poll. Jeremy Hess is a great coach for the Royals. Ben Hess was an all-conference guard a year ago. Fourth and fifth to me were pretty interesting. Showban, they're kind of the mystery team. We don't know a ton about Show. We know they've got players. They always have players. New coach. They seem to turn over coaches a lot. I'm not sure who's coaching the team this year, Sean. I have not been able to find that information anywhere.
Yeah, I don't know either. And it's a new head coach, right? And the girls was a new head coach, but I didn't really see where they had a new posting for the boys head coach, but they've always got some electrifying players out there, and the Showbound's always involved in some of those scores that are like 80 something to 23, and they always are able to put up points. So we'll have to see how they finish out there in that conference.
For sure. Mackey is led by second-year coach Scott Yearsley. Last year was his first year with the Miners, and that was his first year of basketball coaching, period, Sean. He had been a longtime basketball referee and kind of dipped his toe into the coaching waters, and I thought did a great job. So we'll see what he does in year two. And then the bottom half of the preseason poll, Leadore was 6, North Gem 7, Taylor's Crossing 8, Clark County 9. The problem that all of those schools run into is numbers, right? A lot of these teams have 6, 7 players maybe total, while those teams near the top, Rockland, Grace Lutheran, etc., maybe have bigger numbers. So
yeah, in those smaller teams, you're one injury away from kind of your season being in a tough spot because there's just no one else. We're always like next man to step up, but some of those smaller programs, there's no next man.
Yeah. North Gem in particular lost their entire starting 5 to graduation. So, could be interesting for Coach Corda and company there in Bancroft this year. Let's move up to the 1A D1 level, the High Desert Conference. This is a 3-team league. Pretty straightforward with the coaches poll. Grace was picked 1, Butte County picked 2, Chalice picked 3. I'm inclined to agree with that, right? All these guys we just saw get to the championship game in football for Grace. You know, Dallin Draper and Teton Anderson and Ty Gilbert all play basketball for a Grace team that got to the semifinals last year at the 1A D1 state tournament. Coach Rory Lloyd's bringing back a lot of good players at Grace.
Yeah, Grace on athleticism alone could get the #1 spot, I think, for my vote. You know, just athletically wise, they're just going to be a tough team. And Butte County also, you know, they had a good football team. A lot of those players are going to come back and play there. And Chalice again is a numbers game too. I think they have a hard time getting the numbers out sometimes for the Chalice team.
Yeah, Chalice has a new coach this year. Butte County, led by head coach Mindy Gamet, and then, you know, some of their key players are Logan Gamet and Corey Gamet. So it's a Gamet affair at Butte County. To me, they're a step behind Grace, though. You know, Grace lost one significant player. It was Gray Gibbs, their 6'8" center last year. But they've got some, you know, Draper 6'4", Titan Anderson 6'2". I think Grace is going to be just fine. And so it'll be interesting to see how Grace goes throughout the season. Unlike the football team, we've got our eyes on Grace. We're watching.
Well, we kept watching Grace, but you just don't. You know, there's not a lot of coverage of Grace. I don't know what media source picks up Grace, you know what I mean? And they're kind of missing out, to be honest with you. There's a lot of interesting stories. You've got some really good athletes that could compete, you know, at any level. So, you know, if you're a news outlet, find that Grace number.
Yeah, and I'm telling you right now, Ty Gilbert is such a fun point guard to watch. I got to watch him at state last year. He's a fun one to watch. So keep an eye on Ty Gilbert, the point guard for Grace as well. All right, let's move on up to 2A. Let's start in the Southeast Idaho Conference, District 5, because Bear Lake has been on a run in the last 10 years. They've won several state championships under head coach Brandon Carlson. It's not it's not what people would call pretty basketball. They pretty much man you up, play defense, and they had a lot of games last year that were in the 40s and a couple that were even like in the 30s. But for Bear Lake, they're okay with that. They're kind of a gritty, hard-nosed defensive team. It's all the same players that we've seen for the last several years. Brady Shaw, yeah, Tyler Beersford, Keaton Carlson.
You say a lot of the names together in football, and then when it comes to basketball, it's the same thing. We just call an assist in basketball.
I mean, their entire starting five, Sean, all played football with Beersford and Shaw and Tayson Neal and Carlson and Bryson Crane.
And we covered them a couple years ago, and it was all the same guys, and they're still here. And it's just kind of a gritty, tough team, and they make you work hard. And, you know, a lot of teams like that, it's a defense. If they know if they can keep a team under 40 or 50, they know their record is really, really good there. And Bear Lake is one of those teams.
Yeah, Bear Lake was so injured at the beginning of the season last year. They started slowly out of the gate. They had a lot of players that were injured. They seem to be relatively healthy despite going on as deep a run as you can in football, right? They won the championship not very long ago. So we'll keep an eye on Bear Lake this year. They were picked to win District 5. Aberdeen was picked to finish second, Westside third, Soda Springs fourth, and then Malad fifth. Who do you think is the team that is best positioned to challenge Bear Lake?
You know, I like Aberdeen. I like Brody Beck. I like what they have there. They have a really good core guys. Again, the same thing. They're going to transition from football, and they had some battles in football, and I can see Aberdeen doing it, and Westside is good too. And the team I kind of think is flying under the radar, Soda Springs is a good team. They have I'll butcher the kid's last name, but I believe he had a sister that played too at Soda Springs. But there's always like these kind of core people in Soda Springs that have some good basketball. And, you know, Century girls basketball coach Chris Schuler, he comes from Soda Springs and kind of that coaching tree of people. And so there's always some good basketball in Soda Springs. It's not just the water that's bubbling, it's the teams as well.
Yeah, so Soda Springs, Ryan Yamauchi is the head coach there. Rhett Yamauchi and I hope I'm saying that.
Yeah, that's why I
right.
said I knew it was that, and I was going to let you're the name guy, man. I'm going to let you do it.
you say it quickly enough, nobody knows. Yeah, right. So Rhett Yamauchi for Soda Springs. Westside lost their entire starting lineup from a year ago, but Tyler Brown is a veteran coach. Eli Brown, Owen Nielsen are kind of the guys that are expecting to make the leap there. Malad has a new coach this year. They were picked to finish in 5th place. Malad's new head coach is Zach Butler. He had previously been an assistant at Pocatello High, so learned from some great coaches there in Pokey. And then I'm with you. I think Aberdeen's got a lot of potential with, Brody Beck and Marshall Elliott, Cale Adamson. JC Bright is a dynamic athlete. And then Sean, this was from Aberdeen played last week at Teton. I'm going to share my screen. This is from Aberdeen Tiger Sports on Instagram. Let me see here.
And it just got a boatload of seniors too. Like they've all played. These guys have played for years. That makes a difference when you get those teams that have played forever and have that experience. That translates into some postseason runs usually.
Yes. So for those of you that are watching the video version of this on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel or Facebook page, make your screen full size. This is Seth Hall coming away with a steal and a dunk. This is going to be pretty awesome to watch here. So it's somewhat hard to see. And then how about that? A little reverse two-handed jam from Seth Hall.
Just a normal outing at the at the 2A level, right?
pretty legit. So anyways, you can check that out on social media as well with Aberdeen Tiger Productions. Seth Hall, dynamic player. So yeah, I'm inclined to say Aberdeen is a team that could challenge certainly as well. Aberdeen, as we said, went up to Teton last week and played exceptionally well. They did lose, but Teton's a very good team, as we'll talk about here in just a moment. Let's go to the Nuclear Conference, District 6, where Ririe was picked as the preseason favorite. This one surprised me a little bit because this has been North Fremont's league the last several years, Sean.
Yeah, you've got North Fremont, which has been kind of just a juggernaut in that conference and at the state level, and now you've got Ririe they've been kind of building, gaining some momentum, and I think that will be, you look at those teams and you just kind of see a potential where there could be some different upsets and things happen, but it's nice to see Ririe kind of back in that front running spot there. But it's hard to look past North Gem for me.
Yeah, North Fremont with Shannon Hill has done a tremendous job. Yeah. Shannon Hill has done a phenomenal job with that team. Jed Hill, Hank Richardson are some of the key guys they'll rely on. Jordan Hamilton is the coach for Ririe. They've got some great players. Sterling Bybee will lead the way. They did lose Chris Kern, who was an all-conference performer for them last year. And to me, Firth is another team you can't count out. Scott Adams is a legendary coach in the state of Idaho. How many years has he taken Firth to state and won state? And again, it's, Burton Park and Jacobson and some athletes like that that'll be leading Firth. So I don't think you can ever count Firth out either.
Yeah, Firth seems to always, go to state, and like last year they went and they lost a tough St. Mary's team, and then ended up playing Bear Lake and going 2-0, but Bear Lake took the consolation. But yeah, Firth's always there. So you've got a bunch of teams in that conference that have a lot of state experience, and that stuff grows and builds culture, and it'll be very interesting to see. But I like that Ririe is kind of, coming back, because I remember Ririe, I think, had a stretch where they won a few too. So it'll be an exciting conference.
Yeah, Ririe's girls, of course, off and running. They were picked to win the Nuclear Conference as well. So how about this? The preseason coaches poll in the Nuclear: Ririe 1, North Fremont 2, West Jefferson was picked to finish third. Kelvin Croce in his second or third year as the coach at West J. Firth was picked fourth, actually, and then Salmon was picked fifth. A player to keep an eye on from both teams for West J, Blake Briggs, and for Salmon, Heston Hagen are players you'll want to keep an eye on there. But I don't know. This could be 1 through 4. Could be pretty interesting this year up in the nuclear.
Yeah, like I said, I like West Jefferson, North Fremont, and Ririe, and right now Ryrie's got the expectations of winning, but you'll have to see. They a lot of people think it's going to be a pretty tight conference race where any team could come in on a given night and win. So it'll be exciting to see. They got a lot of good shooters in that conference for sure.
Yeah, Firth did get an overtime win over Fruitland, 65-64 during the opening weekend of competition. They also lost by 18 to Melba, and Melba is the defending 2A state champion. So that gives you an idea of maybe, statewide where these teams will stack up. Ririe is 1-1 as well. They defeated Malad and then lost by 11 to Teton. And speaking of Teton, let's move to the 3A level where you've got kind of this battle for positioning, just like it was in football, just like it will be in girls basketball. It's going to be Teton and Sugar Salem that are duking it out in the Mountain Rivers Conference up there in District 6. Sugar, of course, has the more recent championship pedigree. Sean Freeman has won a couple of state titles already in his short career at Sugar. They lost a lot to graduation, but we know the kind of athletes they've got. And for Teton, it's the Hoosevelts. Rob Hoosevelt is the head coach. There's Thomas and Jerem Hoosevelt will kind of lead the way there for Teton.
Yeah, and Teton and Sugar Salem, they're excited, right? That they're what was the ranking? They're tied for 1-1, so that'll be some motivation for those games. And Teton already with a couple pretty good wins, like you said there, over some good opponents. And I like Teton. But you can't count Sugar Salem, and then you have West Jefferson is still another. Well, not West Jefferson.
South Fremont.
South Fremont is there too. They just like in football, they were right in there. Some of those games beat some teams, and they're going to be right in there as well too. So again, when you get those 3-team conferences, throw the records, throw everything out the door because you got to play those teams basically 4 times to win, right? So at least, so whatever you do in conference, and then at least 2 or 3 times in that tournament as well.
Yeah. South Fremont has a new head coach this year, Alex Amini. Teton and Sugar have veteran coaches, as we said. It'll be interesting. Teton and Sugar met in girls soccer, boys soccer. I mean, I don't know, this year it just seems like Teton and Sugar are destined to collide with everything that's going on there. So we'll find out. Sugar's got some 3A opponents coming up and even a 4A in Shelley. They play Shelley this week. They play Snake River. That'll be a good barometer of where Sugar Salem is in relation to Teton and some of the other 3A teams. Let's talk about Snake River. Coming into District 5 in the preseason coaches poll, it's another just a small 3-team conference. But in the preseason coaches poll in this conference, it was Marsh Valley picked 1, Snake River 2, American Falls 3. Marsh Valley won state now. It was 2 years ago. But they lost so much to graduation. They do bring back Stanton Howell. He's going to be the leader. Kent Howell is still there to coach. But the question is, who else steps up to fill the gaps for Marsh Valley?
Yeah, and last year Marsh Valley was the number 1 seed and went 2-0, and that very rarely happens. So they're going to want to come back and be tough. So kind of some question marks. And then, like you said, Snake River, had a good run last year with a 4th place finish, and they're going to be tough as well. So again, those 3 league conferences in our neck of the woods are tough just night in and night out. They'll have a lot of comparable games with some teams, and it's we talked about this before. It kind of comes down to scheduling, I think, sometimes too in basketball. If you get a good, you get yourself a tough schedule. Play hard quality opponents night in, night out. That will make a big difference.
Yeah, Marsh Valley lost 4 of 5 starters, so it's going to be these bench players that are now stepping into the starting lineup: Bradley Belknap, Alex Vaughn, and they still have the Highland transfer as well, Ezra Godfrey, who
Oh yeah,
yeah,
he was a good football player too, right? I forgot all about him.
yes, he had a great football season, and he did play a lot last year at Highland, a 5A school. You know, he even started a couple of games, and I feel like for Highland as they were trying to find something that worked. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Snake River, of course, has Bob Coombs, who went over the 500 career win mark last year. To very little. I mean, this was a big deal, right? And like one news outlet reported on it initially, and then a couple others picked it up later on. And I don't know, there just wasn't much acclaim there. But I mean, I don't know of any other coaches that have ever won 500 games in the state of Idaho.
Well, I mean, what do you have in a season? If you make it to state, you maybe have 20 something games, right?
Yeah,
So, I mean, that's if you win it, right? If you go all the way, all those games, maybe you have 20 plus games on your record. I mean, that's best case scenario. So think about what that would take to have 500. I mean, that's crazy. That's just crazy.
So Bob Coombs is back to coach Snake River. His son, Marcus Coombs, this is his, I believe, his last child. He's had a lot of children don the Snake River, purple over the years. Marcus is the last one, I believe. Luke Higginson is coming back. He's a great player for Snake. To me, it's really a coin flip between Marsh Valley and Snake River. And then American Falls was picked to finish third. They've got a couple of seniors, Cody Mortensen, Josh Schmidt, they're going to try and lean on. But to me, this is Marsh Valley, Snake River, and can't wait to see those two duke it out. Both teams could get to state, I think.
Yeah, and they did last year, and I wouldn't be surprised. And I mean, Marsh Valley was the 1 seed last year. Snake River is the 3rd seed, even, coming out of that conference. So that's the one nice thing about Max Preps. Even if you don't win the conference and you still have another bid, if you have a high ranking, you'll probably get it. You'll probably be on the opposite. Well, I shouldn't even say that. I was going to say you'll probably be on the opposite side, but that's not necessarily true. But hopefully you're on the opposite side of that team that kind of plagued you all year and make a run at state. I had to catch myself there.
No, you're good. So the district champs from District 5 and 6 get to go to state for 3A this year. And then the second place teams from each district will play each other in a play-in game. So you're looking at maybe Snake versus Sugar, Snake versus Teton, Marsh versus Teton, Marsh versus Sugar. And then after you win that, you have to play another play-in game against the 3rd place team from District 3, which is probably
a double.
Yes.
Okay.
You gotta win twice to get that second bid from the East. And you're looking at probably playing like Fruitland or maybe McCall Donnelly, who was in the championship 2 years ago. I mean, it's tough. You better go win the district.
I didn't know it was a double because last year it wasn't a double. Yeah, win the district. Jeez. Yeah. I guess that makes the district title important when those scenarios arise for sure. Yeah, because they had 2 playing games last year, and Fruitland, Kellogg, and Snake River had to play Filer, which Filer is always a tough team out of that area as well. So, yeah, the Magic Valley always has really good basketball at that 3A level. There are just tons of schools at the Magic Valley and 3A, just tons of them.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, let's move up to 4A, where there are no state tournament play-in games this year, Sean. Not a one. It is basically, hey, your league gets this many bids, and that's it. So let's start in the High Country Conference, District 6. Hillcrest, the reigning 4A champs, heavy favorites to not only win the High Country Conference, but I would say to win the 4A state title again. There's lots of teams lining up to take their shot, but I mean, boy, Isaac Davis, 6'8", big man down low, just menacing.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw over the past week, they went to Utah and beat 3 really good Utah teams, like really good teams. I don't have a huge barometer, but someone was telling me the one they beat another team that's nationally ranked. So Hillcrest already 3-0 versus Utah.
Yes. So they went down. They and Madison went to the same tournament, which tells me Madison also thinks they've got the goods to be a really good team this year. They went down to the Corner Canyon Tournament of Champions. Corner Canyon, historically very strong program in the state of Utah. Hillcrest went down, as you said, and went 3-0 with wins over Orem by 10. They beat Timpview by 30 plus, and then they beat Pleasant Grove by 6 in a very low scoring game, 50-44. Speaking of Utah opponents, could we get Wasatch lined up to play Hillcrest? Huh? See Isaiah Harwell and company.
They said one of those teams beat Wasatch. One of those Utah teams beat. I don't know how to look that up, but you probably do. One of those teams beat Wasatch Academy, and that's why everyone's like, for them to beat one of those Utah teams beat Wasatch, that Hillcrest beat, I believe, is what I heard through the grapevine, and everyone's like was kind of wowed. Might have been Timpview. I don't know.
Yeah, it was. So Timpview beat Wasatch by 2, and that was Hillcrest's most dominant win. They won 73-46 over Timpview.
And yeah, and Wasatch is like nationally ranked. So yeah, Hillcrest is good. And you forget, you feel like Davis has been there forever and he's only a junior, right? So man, yeah, they're going to be loaded. But that conference, you know, with that being said, that conference is loaded with players too. I think Blackfoot, you know, they bring back a lot of people, Deegan Hale and Javante King, and they've got a really nice team. You know, Shelley has Austin Cannon and Nate Nelson. I remember Nate Nelson from last year, and I'll see Shelley tonight, so I'll have a kind of a good idea from them, and they've got a really good coach. And I mean, that conference is going to be very tough. I think Hillcrest is just probably on a different level, and that's, you know, second place is going to be kind of a battle, you know, maybe between Blackfoot, Shelley, and Idaho Falls, and then Skyline too. I mean, geez, you know, Skyline, you know, they have a really good team as well. And man, that's going to be a tough conference.
It is going to be fascinating to see who gets that second spot to state, because you're right. Any of the other teams are all capable.
Like they have the preseason. I had to go back to the preseason, has Idaho Falls 6, but you know, I don't think Idaho Falls is a bad team in that conference at all by any means. So yeah, they have Dylan Ball and Ty Stacker, and they were pretty good too. But man, that's gonna be a battle in that conference. And Bonneville always has a strong team as well. But you know, looking at it right now, I think Blackfoot is probably a good second. They bring a lot of guys that are pretty good. They had Ryan Reynolds, not the actor, but the player. And he's a big, tall guy, but he also can shoot from outside, from what I remember, pretty well.
Yes.
They only kind of lose one guy, but Blackfoot should be pretty strong. It will be pretty strong too, but you know, it's not going to be easy. They're going to have to beat some of those teams multiple times, and just to get a shot at Hillcrest. And barring something crazy, I would pick Hillcrest to win that conference.
Yeah, so the preseason coaches poll: Hillcrest 1, Blackfoot 2, Skyline 3, Shelley 4, Bonneville 5, Idaho Falls 6. Bonneville has a new head coach, and Eric Wood comes from Texas, I believe. Has a pretty impressive coaching background. Shelley, of course, Jim Colson is still coaching there. Always gets the most out of his guys. Skyline's got a longtime coach in Clint Cornish, who's one of the best around. Coach RV at Blackfoot. Idaho Falls has a new head coach this year in Greg Guza. There's just really good coaches in this league. So yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. Let's go to District 5, where only one playoff bid to state available. Last year, of course, Pocatello, Preston, Century all duked it out all season long. Pocatello was picked to win the conference in the preseason poll. Preston was picked second. Century picked third. I guess I can't really disagree with that. Pocatello is the reigning district champ, right? They got all the way to the championship game last year.
Yeah, and Pocatello picked up the player from Burley, the 6'10" Gage Octavius. I'm probably butchering his last name. He's 6'10" guy from Burley. He was pretty good last year. He's worked a lot. I saw some film on him, and he is he's pretty dominant 6'10" player, and he's there. So now you have Julian Bowie and the 6'10" Gage at Pocatello High School, and it'd be hard to pick against that combination right now. They're pretty solid. But the comparison would be Pocatello and Preston both played Bishop Kelly this past week. Bishop Kelly, the #1 preseason pick out of Boise, out of the conference there, and both Pocatello and Preston beat them handedly. And so that's pretty good. And then, and I know Coach Ryan Frost would just love for me not to say anything about Century, but they beat Timberline, and Timberline's got one of the highest recruited tall guys in AJ LeBeau. And I don't know, I'm taller than most people on Century's team, but Century's got a core of guards that are really good with Luke Pantea and Elias Blackhawk, and Richie Bull down low is not bad, and Chari Horrocks. They're I'm going to tell you, you had to drive far, in the snow and play a scrappy Century defensive team. You don't want to do it. So that conference is going to be good. And then Preston, we know Preston, you got Jones coach there, coaching legend, and they've got Hobbs and his son Drew Jones, and those two guys are phenomenal. And Preston always has 5 or 6 guys that are 6'2" and can run and shoot threes, and man, they're going to be good too. So that conference, good luck day in and day at night. But right now, I think with that transfer that Pocatello got, I mean, that kind of puts them a little above, because neither Preston or Century really has anyone that dominant at that height. And it's kind of the return of the big man in Idaho. A lot of teams have some big athletic guys that are pretty good, and anytime AJ LeBeau got the ball, he scored. So anytime he got it inside, he scored. So he is pretty good, but denying him the ball, which I think Preston could do as well too. They have really good athletic guards, and same with Pocatello with Hales and Bowie. It's going to be those are some good teams. And there might be some grumbling that there's only one team that makes it, but whatever.
I'm so exhausted from the talk of it, but it is the storyline again, where Century, Pocatello, and Preston, I think all could go win District 3. I think they could all go win District 4. I think they could all go win District 1, 2. They're not winning District 6. That's Hillcrest.
Yeah, and I think tonight is Hillcrest Preston. Maybe it's tonight. That will be a interesting game. Sometime this week it's Hillcrest Preston. I know that, and I'm pretty excited to see how that turns out. Yeah,
Hillcrest and Preston play Thursday night.
Yeah,
at Hillcrest.
I think that will be a good barometer for the District 5 for a kind of, if Preston, see how Preston does against Hillcrest, and yeah, he'll be good. They get a spot. Definitely. They're going to compete hard. It is what it is.
Yeah. So Pocatello, you mentioned the transfer from Burley. Gage Ontiveros has come in. Julian Bowie, of course, is already committed to Boise State. Crew Hales is back on the perimeter. That was Pokey's problem last year, was they had the outside shooting, but if they went cold, it was tough for them to score. Isaiah Harwell, especially with Century, a couple of times when Pokey played Century last year, basically shut down anything on the inside. I remember, I think I was talking to you about it, Sean, where there was a game where Pocatello tried to go inside on a couple of early possessions. Harwell had some swats. Then Pokey was just like, all right, we're just going to keep it on the perimeter and take our chances. And so it's nice now that they have a guy with some size down low in Ontiveros that can maybe do some damage.
Yeah, it's going to give Joe Green and that coaching staff a lot more, just variety in what they can do offensively, because even at state, a couple of those state games for Pocatello, they got cold and kept those games really close, and it was tough. And then it was very apparent against Hillcrest, if you don't have someone large and in charge down there to match up with Davis, you're in for a rough night. I mean, he's just good, and man, he's only gonna get better, right? And we saw him last year, and he was pretty dominant last year, so I can't imagine the run he'll have this year.
Yeah. And Preston, of course, Drew Jones is back, the son of head coach Tyler Jones, one of the best coaches in the state of Idaho for basketball. Preston lost some guys to graduation, right? Brecker Knapp and Rhett Larson, especially down low. And Gabe Hammonds, their top shooter from the outside. But I'll tell you, I saw Preston's JV last year. They beat some varsity teams at the Preston Indians Classic. Like they got guys coming up. They'll be just fine. And all these guys have younger brothers. Teton Knapp is making his way through the ranks for Preston. And so Preston's going to be just fine. And Century too, because they've got great coaching with Ryan Frost. And I don't know, it'll be fun to watch those three duke it out. I mean, this league right now, Sean, District 5 is a combined 8-1.
Yeah, and the Century lost to Middleton, but that was anyone's game. It was really close at the end. Middleton I was ranked kind of low, I thought, in the rankings. I think that's a good team you're going to have to keep your eye out for in 5A. But it was interesting. Highland beat, and we're going to talk about them. Highland beat Middleton, but lost to Timberline, and then Century beat Timberline and lost to Middleton in that little switch there. But yeah, you look at Preston, they beat Burley, they beat Bishop Kelly 65-40, they beat Valley View 80-30, and then Preston boys play Highland boys tonight. So that'll be another. That's why I like basketball. There's always a good game on.
Always.
There's always an intriguing matchup, even though it's only Tuesday, the start of the week. You're going to get something good.
Always something good to watch for sure. So yeah, District 5 is, as I said, they are 8-1. District 3 is 3-13 right now as a league. So I mean, it's not even close. It's laughable at this point. Timberline, you mentioned AJ LeBeau for fans in East Idaho that maybe don't know. He's a 7-footer that committed to Washington State, and so for Century to beat him and Highland to play close. Very impressive for both of those squads.
Yeah, because he's not just tall. He's pretty athletic. He's got a high basketball IQ. Timberline is well coached. It's just you've got to when you don't have the height, because like they say you can't coach height. You've got to have coaches that can go in and kind of scheme a way to deny the guy the ball, because every time the guy got the ball, AJ he put it in the basket.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's finish up with 5A, the High Country Conference. We talked about Hillcrest went down to that Corner Canyon Tournament of Champions and went 3-0. Madison also went down there. They went 0-3. They lost to Fremont. They lost to Corner Canyon, and then they lost to Timpview, that Timpview team that Hillcrest blew out by 30 plus. I don't think that really tells us much about Madison. I think they're still the favorite. They were picked number 1 in the preseason coaches poll. Rigby was 2nd. Thunder Ridge was 3rd. Highland was picked 4th. I think this is going to be a fun league night in, night out. I really do like Rigby. Kobe Jones is a dynamic scorer. Thunder Ridge has a great coach in Lee Toldson. And Highland's got a new coach in a former outstanding player, one of the best players in, certainly the city of Pocatello's history, but, Idaho history as well, and Matt Stuckey.
Yeah, Matt, he's a friend of the program. He's a great coach, played at ISU, had a great career at ISU. And, Highland's got maybe the best overall player in that league in Jaden Wright. Jaden Wright he's really good. He's a dynamic, tall player. I think it gets lost of how tall he is. He's a pretty tall guy. And when I'm looking at that league, I see him as maybe the best overall, just all around player in that league. And when you have the best player, that can make things interesting. So I like Jaden Wright out of Highland. Madison is always good. Madison Rigby went to state last year and did some damage. Rigby is one of those teams that just always has a good basketball team. You might not know anyone on that team, but they're always going to go out and play. Like they don't have the per se star, but they always out and compete. And Thunder Ridge, they lost a lot of people, but they're fast. I've got to see them play. They're quick. They're going to play hard defense, and Thunder Ridge is going to be. They lost some players, but I think they're going to be good just because you've got like you said. I don't know if you said it, but they have Nick Potter is really good, and they're just quick, and they're gonna make you work for your points.
Yeah, Thunder Ridge is going to be an interesting team to watch as well. 1.5 bids to state out of this district. They would have to play somebody from Boise, essentially the second place team. That'd be a tough matchup. So again, you want to win the district. That's the theme of today's show is win the district.
I just, what did you say? It was Madison, Rigby, Thunder Ridge, Highland. I think Highland is a little underrated there, but it'll be interesting to kind of see how that ends out. I think right now, just if you look at who comes back, Madison is probably, that makes sense to be number one, but I think Matsuki will surprise a few people in that coaching role there. Well, not me, but maybe some people out there, but that'll be good. Like I said, I think Jaden Wright is going to be a pretty impactful night. He's like a 20-point kind of scorer guy a night. So it'll be very fun to see what happens.
Yeah. Well, somebody's got to finish fourth. I mean, just like in volleyball.
Oh, I know.
With this league, right? I mean,
yeah,
we talked about it in volleyball where all of the teams are so good. And, somebody's got to take last, unfortunately. It's going to be a lot of fun now that we're into the flow of the season. We've got girls hoops, boys hoops, so much stuff to talk about week in, week out, and we will do it again for you next week. Sean, as always, thanks for the time. We appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah. We've got I'm doing a Century Place Shelley tonight. So boys basketball. That'll be a good matchup. Like you said, Shelley's coach, he helped out at Century. He was at Shelley, helped out at Century a little bit. He's kind of a good friend of Coach Frost, and Shelley always has a good team, so I'm excited to see that game tonight.
Always well coached by Jim Colson for sure. So, all right, thanks for tuning in, everybody, to the East Idaho Prepcast. For Sean Kane, I'm Brandon Baney, and we'll see you again next time on IdahoSports.com.